Yep. And welcome, everyone. My name is Amos Joseph. I'm joined by my co host, Brook Potter. And this is the 10K Rum Podcast. How's it going today, Brook?
It's going well, Amos. I am having some technical difficulties, as you know. For some reasons, I'm not getting the monitor feedback in my headphones. So if I'm speaking a bit loud, I do apologize to the audience from now. But I'm doing well. I had a very good weekend. Summer is in full swing. I'm getting ready for my trip to Iceland. Had a pretty decent mushroom trip. So things are looking up, man. Things are looking up.
Oh, we're talking about that on air.
Of course, I was somewhere where mushrooms are legal. So
Uh-huh.
yes. How are you
Now,
doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. If someone's wondering, pretty much in the middle of a long weekend, I guess. We typically do the stream. It's 11 o'clock my time here in Minnesota, and for Brook it's what, like
5 p.m.
5 p.m.
British Standard Summertime, yeah, BST.
BST, complete BS. No,
Pretty much. There is
but
no summer.
yeah. So I'm sounding a little. My voice is sounding a little deeper simply because I did wake up in the last hour. So, but nonetheless, we are on board with the show. It's episode 57, so we're still going along here, Brooke.
Yeah. I mean, I do have the trip to Iceland coming up, but I think you're organizing a guest so that we would be missing out. But
Right. So yeah, we're still working on that. Brooke is going to be gone now. Is it you're going to be gone for 2 Sundays at least, right?
no, it should just be one. It
Just
should
one?
just be one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're organizing. We're seeing if we want to look into the idea of having like a guest co-host, just to try that out. I know we pretty much haven't done that. Either we just didn't do the show, or we would just we haven't really done it solo for either of us. So
We'll figure it out. Oh, we
yeah,
got somebody who's Crystal is in the chat, and she's
here and
she's
queer.
here. Oh, is that a fact?
That's what she said.
Oh, there we go.
Anyways, so what are you going to be doing in Iceland though, Brooke?
Um, I've got a blonde Russian that's coming with me, so we'll see what's happening with that. But beyond that, we're going to do a little bit of sightseeing, probably a bit of partying. I hear the partying in Iceland is pretty intense because there's only like 2 or 3 hours of darkness during the summer. So all the parties start at midnight and they go until like between 4 and 9 a.m. in the morning. And that's kind of all you do is, you kind of party and just enjoy cold or whatever it is. So we're going to be doing that. We're probably going to do some whale watching. It's not a good time of year for the Northern Lights. But ironically, I saw the Northern Lights when I was out in your neck of the woods in Minnesota, up by our mutual friend's cabin. And so I don't need to see the Northern Lights again.
You said you're going to do whale watching. You're going to go watch a women's march.
You mean a feminist march? No. No, I mean like actual, I guess like blue whales. I don't, honestly, I don't know, but it's a package out there. I mean the big things in Iceland are the glaciers, that you could hike out to. Again, it's the whale watching, the Northern Lights. There's a lot of like old Viking history, Viking sites and fishing villages and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Iceland has been on my list for a bit, so I didn't make Dubai this year, but I'll definitely make Iceland.
Definitely sounds like fun.
Yeah,
I won't be. All I've got going on right now is just the family is over. Not over here at my place, but I know. I don't know if I mentioned it last week. My mom and my sister are visiting from Taiwan. They're visiting here, so they're staying with my sister.
Mm-hmm.
She lives up more towards the cities in here in Minnesota, and then we've been meeting up on the weekends. I know this weekend we're not sure what we're doing yet, but she's here until pretty much the middle of July. So we've been meeting up with her. We've done some family get-togethers, and yeah, so that's been pretty fun so far. But yeah, unfortunately, it's just the weekends because we're all pretty much working.
That's all right.
But now let me just look at something here. The topic we were going to get into today was actually pretty interesting. I know, and actually, you think I should just get right into this? At least the inspiration, we should say.
Sure. I say hit the nail on the head, man.
Yeah. So people have been watching. Anyone that follows me on Twitter, and Brooke knows about this too. Some drama happened earlier this week, where a couple of individuals and I just I basically kind of just say, I'm too edgy, a little too over the top at times for my own good, and for the most part, most people kind of get it. If I have a good rapport with people, it's just I like being edgy. That's a big part of the show is just we're both kind of over the top with our humor and such, but I had to be careful who I do that around, and it's because it could be easily misunderstood at times. And some drama came about that, and took up way too much of my attention for a short period. And I just honestly realized that it's just pointless. People want to think whatever they want to think. I know who I am. I know the kind of person I am, and it's just baseless drama. So anyways, yeah, that's about that. And if anyone has any concerns about that, people who are still, I haven't noticed anything that's developed, but if anyone has any concerns or anything, they can ask me. So anyways, that led to our topic today. So anyone can infer however they want to is women on the internet.
Yeah, this is going to get spicy. Definitely.
Yeah. Now, because pretty much a lot of what we talk about, usually when we talk about women and such, has a lot to do with either stuff we learn on the internet or just, and then of course, people we meet on the internet. Because the blonde Russian you're going to be going with to Iceland, you met her on the internet, right?
Yes, I met her on a travel dating website. Yeah, and we've stayed in touch. We did one trip before to Portugal, which is on my YouTube channel if anyone wants to see that story. And so this is our second trip. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
Right. Now, has it been kind of the experience of meeting a lot of different women on the internet, Brooke? Has that been your experience?
Yes, definitely a lot. I mean, when it comes to meeting people, I'm much better in person, right? So my profile does not hit the boxes because I'm too short, right? Every woman is looking for like a 6'4", 6'6" guy, making $150,000 a year or whatever the case might be. So they want all of these criteria. They take one look at my height, and I'm somewhat chubby, so I'm not in the best shape. Although I am working on it. I've been to the gym 5 times this week, so I don't have great success online.
Mm-hmm.
I should rephrase that. Depends on what country I'm in. I have no success in the UK. Other countries, I'm a god, but that's a whole other story, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I've done limited Tinder, Bumble stuff out here. I've recently kind of got out of that because I've been pulled into a group, which is kind of the inspiration for today's topic, with 3 other women, right? One of whom joined me on the mushroom trip, and I think I sent you some videos of that whole fiasco. And the other 2 are her friends, and they don't seem to realize that there's a guy in this group as well. And it's really fun, kind of like coordinating meetups, going out for drinks, mushroom trips, whatever we're doing. That's what it's for. But it's turned into the girls are basically having fun, showing like funny Tinder profiles and Bumble profiles and stuff like that. And they're competing to see if they could match the same guy, and then like who could sleep with him first, kind of thing. It's just like insane. And the minute I saw they started doing this, I instantly deleted every profile on both those platforms because I don't really want to get dragged into this kind of shit,
Right. Huh. Any of these girls cute that you want to go for, or?
Well, they're probably going to hear this later, so I'm not going to say anything.
Oh, dang it. How is, I guess, because this even kind of goes back to our times as even as ministers too, kind of, right? Like, we've met a lot of, people in general, But
Yes.
we even have a lot of people that we were connected with through ministry that also met women pretty much through the internet, right?
I mean, it's not uncommon. Yeah, it's definitely something that happens. I mean, it's not to say that it can't. Meeting people on the internet happens, and then they meet up, and a couple people got married shortly after having like small stints of a relationship over Skype and all these other types of things. So it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's personally for me, and this is a tidbit for the ladies. Um, the women on Tinder are generally not viewed as like high quality women, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you're a high quality woman, you're going to meet somebody in real life, and you're going to have people in your immediate vicinity that are going to target in on you. So for guys, we look at Tinder or Bumble or any of these kind of modern swiping apps or any kind of online dating, okay, Cupid, Christian Connection, whatever. If you're on one of those sites, chances, not always, but chances are you probably got some issues. You're probably not always the highest quality that's out there. And for me, at least, that's why I prefer to meet people in real life. At least you get the feel for somebody, you get the energy of the person, and you take it from that way. But and one other side note, I don't know if women know this or not, but the women in the group that I'm involved with, they don't seem to understand this. Men don't read your profile, right? On Tinder and Bumble, for the most part, they're just swiping.
Oh yeah, on an app that is strictly swiping, we're mainly looking at just looks.
Yeah, just the pictures.
On certain apps like OkCupid and such, there might be a little more.
Possibly on like a more traditional dating site, that's probably true. But for the swiping apps, Bumble and Tinder, it's a numbers game, right? So
Mm-hmm.
most men are just swiping right on everything, and after they match, then they'll go back and review the profile.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much. I mean there was and I'll just say this too. I actually wanted to. I was looking into this. I know it does get a little bit yes, tedious just constantly swiping.
Yes.
And I actually was looking at ways to sort of hack the app to basically make it every time you turn it on, you can just put it down and it swipes itself.
There are literally scripts that you can run on your phone that just swipe, because I think every day you have like a limited number of swipes. I can't remember the number, but
Right.
yeah, and that's it. This is what, again, women are so discerning and whatever, they're trying to sort through. Men don't give a shit. Men will fuck anything, right? Men, as the old adage goes, a drunk girl falls out of a dumpster behind the bar. Is she cute? We don't give a shit, right? But for women, I understand they're more discerning. They have to be more selective and all these different types of things. But for some reason, women are not always aware that men don't think like them. Is that safe to say?
Oh, very safe to say. I mean, that just I that's another thing too. Is society doesn't really understand. At least it's not consciously aware of the fact that men and women just behave very differently. I know I had a conversation with some people a while back. It was an actual so it's people that I hadn't met before. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to get too much into where or who or whatever. Anyways, met these people. It's a couple, and it was when I was visiting Texas earlier this year.
Right.
So I met these people and I was talking to them about different things because of what kind of fell through with the person I was meeting up with when I was there.
Right.
So I was explaining to them kind of the whole thing with, it's tough to try to be just friends with women. And they kind of looked at me a little funny, and I said, well, think of it this way. Like, unless you're like actually seriously wanting to date, and you're just moving into that realm and just being friends, it's very difficult to have any real meaningful friendship between a guy and a girl. And I said, honestly, that's just the difference. It's just the way I communicate, the way I am, the way I carry myself, tends to be very, at least nowadays, I'm very like, I don't like, I keep saying I don't consider myself the most, if I want to say alpha kind of confident type of guy as I want to, but I'm definitely more so than I used to be.
Yes.
And how that comes across to like trying to be friends with a woman, just not going to work. Um, as well, at least.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean,
So
yeah, go ahead.
I kind of, then they kind of looked at me, still kind of, they're a little confused. I'm like, well, um, come to find out, their friends who I was friends with, uh, kind of told me like, yeah, you were walking on some eggshells there, and you didn't even know it because these people weren't really the most like open-minded when it comes to that. They tend to be more progressive. So I'm talking to them about this, and they actually started to agree as I went on, like telling them about like, well, I mean, there's overlap between men and women. You look at like kind of Jordan Peterson when he talks about the studies, like men and women have a lot of overlap,
Hmm.
but it's the extremes about us that are completely polarized from each other.
Right.
Um, and it kind of going into like, I explained on like commercials and books and movies.
Yes.
What a guy's like. We're more visual. There's colors, there's explosions, there's fast movements. We're very visually driven. While men are watching porn, women are reading 50 Shades of Grey.
Yes. Yes.
That's a huge thing. I think a lot of people can identify and kind of think, oh yeah, yeah, women are reading a book. There's no pictures in 50 Shades of Grey. It's all in your mind. It's all subtlety. You look at even commercials, car commercials, and vehicles, going by really quick, bright colors and fast movements, and then what are female commercials like? There's a lot more subtlety to it.
Yes.
There's a lot more explaining. What does the product do? How does it make you feel? How do you, yes, there's a little bit of, there are selling, like if it's like a makeup product, they're selling how you look, but it's very much getting the mind going rather than like getting your, more touching on the visual side.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. This they ask the question for female advertising, and the female mind will attune to that. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Spot on in that respect. And a lot of it, a lot of people, especially men, they don't seem to understand. There is a reason why, especially when it comes to intergender dynamics and sexual marketplace. There's a reason why men and women are approaching this very differently. Women are only fertile for a number of years. A woman is going to be laid up with a child potentially for 9 months, maybe longer. She's taking the risk to mind the child, for a longer period of time. So as a result of her biology and her sexual strategy, by default, she's trying to produce the best possible offspring while she's fertile, right? And for that, she has to be more discerning, right? So as we've discussed in the red pill community and elsewhere, they're looking for good genetic stock, which is generally why taller guys tend to do better. I mean, if anybody's ever followed the Glorious House of Gains and listened to the stories with Beard So Strong, who I'm actually going to try and get on the podcast. I'm going to send him a message this week. Beard So Strong is a legend on getting laid, and nobody understands why. But the guy's like 6'4", right? So that has a lot to do with it. So yeah, so genetically, height, strength, if you're jacked, tanned, and juicy as fuck, as the guys would say, all those things help. They're also looking for a certain amount of financial provision, because the woman is going to be laid up for 9 months. She's not going to be able to work. She's not going to be as productive and stuff like that. So she's looking for somebody who, can also provide in that sense. And also status. Status is a big thing. The esteem of the group and stuff like that. Now, all of this goes back to our caveman Neanderthal ancestors before the time of Tinder and Bumble. But nonetheless, we really have not evolved past a lot of those stereotypes. And for men, of course, we produce unlimited sperm, which is, why we fuck anything, right? It just doesn't matter, right?
Our
Men fuck
biology
sheep,
literally, yeah. Oh, jeez. Our biology literally explains our sexual strategy.
Yeah. So women, that's why women are more discerning on their profiles, and men not so much. They'll, is she cute? As long as she's not, well, some people do like fat, but as long as she's not too rotund, most guys will go for her.
That is what's interesting is I think you look at the type of even just not that I condone that, not that we condone this at all, but you look at the types of men and women like celebrities will cheat on,
Mm-hmm.
and you can kind of see where we're going, where men and women go. Like, if it's so, like, to say there's a celebrity couple, um the man might go for, I mean, in Hollywood, you might see, obviously more often where like the man might go for another woman who is well known. But typically, when you look at like celebrities, it's like, for example, Tiger Woods
Right. Right.
with his whole thing. He wasn't, he had his wife, but he was also going at other women that no one knew about. And then there
Correct.
was this whole scandal, he's paying these women off so that, they
Stay
can't find
quiet.
out or stay quiet. But it wasn't women anyone would know. But then if you hear about like women who are, these high status roles, they're usually cheating with someone who is either equal or higher in status.
Exactly. That's why actresses and actors generally don't date outside the pool of actors and actresses. Models tend to end up with rock stars. It's the whole, it's hypergamy at the end of the day. But yeah, it's quite a. I mean, for us mere mortals, those of us who are not in the upper echelons of society, at least not yet, it still translates down to us, right? As I say, women are more discerning. Now, again, a tidbit for the ladies: if you're on Tinder and you're on Bumble, not saying that you can't be. I'm just saying you wonder why all of these jerks, assholes, and dickheads keep messaging you, is because if you're on any of these apps, we automatically think that you're not the greatest woman out there. You're probably kind of down for that. So yeah, that's just obviously that's not the rule, but that's generally the way it goes.
Kind of what's developed over time. Even I mean, early Tinder was one way, but now Tinder is kind of seen as like it's frowned upon almost.
Yes, yeah, it's
Almost.
it's not real.
Yeah. I mean,
There is
so
an exception. There is an exception. I have to say this because when I was talking to this, one of my, she's a very good friend of mine. I really do see her like a little sister. Um, we were talking about that, and she adamantly protested my statement because she knows somebody who got married on Tinder. So I think it was a Italian woman, but guess what? She met an Asian man on Tinder,
right.
which is a whole other set of stereotypes. And apparently they were all true, that he was not as aggressive, he was a very nice guy, you know a very fit fella, he looked good and stuff like that, and he really wasn't down for the whole Tinder game. So I'm not saying that that's impossible, but generally speaking, if a high quality man is on Tinder looking at women, he's not looking for anything serious. And even if you're looking for something serious with him, just being on Tinder kind of diminishes your status in his eyes.
I mean, it is a lot of a lot of it goes into the context of where you're and how you're meeting. I mean, excuse me, even and this is again, even though like, I could be aware enough to kind of look past this, even when I was dating for that 1 month, not a university student, there
Yes.
was a context to it. Like there was still like I still met this person on an app.
Yes.
And so there were certain I kept it very casual all the way through. It never really got to a point of serious.
Correct.
Um whereas if I met someone, whereas the people I've met, like I've actually known or met,
Yeah.
it tends to have a different quality to it.
Correct.
So Yeah.
Yeah. I'll add to that. Like I yesterday I went into London for a Christian singles event.
Oh
Right?
boy.
Yeah, tell me about it. Well, first of all, nobody fucking showed up, but that's that's a whole other story. Well, there were two parts. There was a picnic in London that nobody showed up for, and then there was drinks afterwards, which more people showed up for. And it kind of ties in. I don't know if you saw our friend Conk was on Rollo Tomasi's broadcast with Sam Botta, Red Pill and Religion, and I was actually watching it before we got into the stream and stuff like that. So hail out to Conk and Rollo and Sam and everybody out there. Keep up the good fight. But when I was meeting these Christian guys and Christian girls, there were a few that showed up. Probably about 4 showed up, and there were about 6 guys. That's the preferred way to meet somebody. I didn't really connect with any of them, but there was this one guy there who was, well, I can't say recently divorced, but divorced. And he'd been divorced for 3 years. And he went on and on and on about how his wife had basically, tried to accuse him of abuse and rape and, all of the terrible cliches that we've heard of regarding, false allegations and false accusations and stuff like that. And he went on and on and on about all of that. And then I kind of turned to him like, then why are you here? Like, if women have been treating you so badly and it's been so much pain and hurt, are you looking to get married again? And he said yes. He just sat there and said yes. And then he tried to spiritualize it. Now, of course, in the Christian tradition, sex before marriage is considered, a sin and whatever and stuff. Not all sections of Christianity, but his own definitely did. So when he said yes, he would consider getting married again. He tries to spiritualize it, like, it'd be good to have companionship, this, that, and the other. And I just turned to him and be like, it's okay. You're a man. You can say you want to fuck. It's all right. Sex is good, right? And he was so religiously bottled up he couldn't say it. And the women that were there obviously took note of this. Like, this man is so on that religious track that he can't even be a man. And it was so bad that at one point he turns to us. Well, my flatmate was there as well. And he said that his psychopath ex-wife, if tomorrow she said, I want to get back together with you, he said he would take her back. And I looked at him like, what the hell is wrong with you? And then he quoted Hosea, Hosea in the Bible,
Jesus,
forced to marry a prostitute and stuff. And I turned to him and said, that's not doctrine. You are not Hosea. And that was to symbolize Israel's disobedience to the covenant. That has nothing to do with you. But it was absolutely frightening to see that whole conversation. It was terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, needless to get into the fact that we both know that there's no real there's no real scriptural basis for no sex before marriage. I think it was pretty much
depends. I wouldn't say there's no basis, depending on how you interpret it.
There's no clear, solid this for sure says this.
Yeah, it's kind of nuanced, and the culture and other things, especially as women were viewed as possessions, so
it's nowhere near as clear as thou shalt not kill.
Yeah, it's definitely not that. But I mean, I agree. But in that respect, the more conservative Christian sects and so forth definitely hold that sex before marriage, is a sin or whatever the case might be. But it's ironic because divorce in the church is just as high as it is outside the church in many respects. Which I also brought up with this guy. Like, he insists that he has to marry a Christian and his ex-wife was a Christian. I was like, well, how did that work out for you? Like, how does that help? If it's just as bad inside and out, why not focus on somebody that you might be compatible with rather than dogma,
And that's what's interesting too. Excuse me, is just because you agree with someone doesn't mean even this and I'll say this too. With just because you have like similar, even like ideology and like let's say political beliefs,
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're going to actually be compatible with someone.
Correct. Correct.
I'm still, and I'll admit, I'm still kind of stuck with that. Like at times, just with the connections we've made, because of this podcast and such, and people I've met, I always kind of thought, oh, I want to like, meet a chick who's like an ANCAP or a minarchist or a libertarian. And it's like, that ain't shit. That's not going to mean anything. It doesn't actually
No.
do anything. Not a university chick was sorry, chick student, whatever. She was like center left.
Right. But I mean, she was at
So
least open to hear some of your views.
right. Very, and I really pushed it to see where she would go, to see how far she could like, I guess, deal with me. And definitely like went pretty far when I talked to like just the more touchy subjects on like borders, immigration and such. And
Prostitution.
no, I didn't talk about that.
Damn it.
Funny thing that you bring that up, because I remembered Conk and Rolo and the show they did yesterday. Was it yesterday? It was Friday.
No, it's Friday. Yeah.
Friday. When they touched on I don't know if Conk got that from us. When we had him on the show, did we bring up the whole fornicate, like defining fornication?
We started to discuss it, yeah, and how God used fornication and sexual
Because
language.
he just like ran with it in Rolo's show, and I was like, wait, did we say that to him?
I
Did
haven't reached that far in it, so when I see it, and anybody who's interested, we'll probably put the link for that interview below.
Yeah.
He does
mention the Shitlord Preachers podcast.
Oh, he did.
He
Okay,
does.
cool.
He does. Like just briefly, he goes, yeah. So when I was on the Shitlord Preachers podcast, and then that's like all we ever hear of it. But yeah, he talks about kind of like how fornication and how like the word fornix meant like an archway, which was kind of the typical place where the prostitutes would hang out. And I think even at one point, when you and I discussed this years ago, we touched on how like, well, really fornication was just fucking a woman you didn't pay for.
Yeah. It's because women were viewed as possession. So if you're violating the woman, because that's how they sold the girl, family got a dowry, it was a financial thing. So to rob a family of the virginity of a girl was fornication, meaning you've done that and you haven't paid the price for her virginity.
I mean, without even getting into whether or not during the time of the New Testament was polygamy or like having concubines or multiple wives was even okay. Although we did understand was a wife was a possession. You came to an agreement with the father and you made a purchase, really.
Basically. And a lot of those cultural idioms play into the scripture, and it's not in scripture, so people aren't aware with it. So it's very difficult for us to impose our 21st century understanding on these words back to 2,000 years ago when Paul was writing these things. So I'll have to check it out. I'd love to. I mean, hopefully you'll get Conk on as a guest announcer when I'm in Iceland, and you and him could hash it out, and we'll see.
He wanted to talk about something completely different, which is just as interesting. So we'll see where that goes. Now, how many women have you like? So would you recommend to people like is it necessarily a good or a bad idea to meet women on the internet?
I believe in casting as big a net as possible because I'm an optimist, right? It's just that when it comes to meeting women online, I tend to have much lower expectations. As I said, they're generally not really quality women. So if I meet somebody in person, that tends to be a better way to connect. So I think all of the girlfriends I've met in person.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of the women that I've had relationships with I've met in person. Right. So
you mean relations?
Yeah, relations. So it didn't end up in a relationship, but we had relations. Those tend to be the ones I met online. I'm just kind of running it through my head now. Yes, I think it's 100% of my relationships met in person, and 100% of my relations I met online. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes. But it requires going out. It requires, which is why I'm willing to go to a Christian meetup. I've been to other single meetups in London. London is great for that kind of stuff. Speed dating. Uh, you know, I did a London on film singles walking tour where they went to show, oh, this is where James Bond was shot, and this is where Harry Potter was shot, and it was like 20 of us, men and
Oh, I'm
women.
sorry. I got confused for a second. I thought you meant like actually shot. I'm like, oh, James Bond gets shot all the time, and I'm like, wait, Harry Potter got shot? Sorry. Um,
But yeah, that's those are the kinds of things I recommend people do, and especially if you're passionate. Even like I'm part of the London Psychedelic Society because we kind of touched on that. Even they have a singles event at the London Psychedelic Society. These are people who trip on mushrooms and LSD.
and hopefully meet someone along the way.
Yeah, that's totally that's totally a thing. So London is great, but I suggest go to the events, right? Depending on where you're at. I know that's a bit like in your situation, you're kind of far from the cities. It's not as easy for you, which I know has been a downfall. But anybody who's out there, that's what I recommend.
Hmm. Now, right now, are you seeing any women that you've met on the internet?
One.
Okay, how's that
Yeah.
going?
It's all right. It's all right. Yeah, I didn't meet her in one of those apps though. I met her on more like a website. And we went out a couple of times, and I think I sent you some pictures of her. Nice girl. I think we kind of both know it's not really going forward,
Hmm.
but she's not Mrs. Right, but she's Mrs. Right now. So we'll see how that goes.
Hence, it's not going into relationship, but more just.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have had some relations, but it may not develop beyond that.
That's a tough one,
Yeah,
because and I'm just thinking, and all of our former Christian connections are just frowning upon us. Just
yeah. Well, that's their fucking problem.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's what's interesting now is now, and I know we're kind of straying a little off topic. How was it taught to you, like the sort of the I guess the consequences of sex before marriage, outside of like the typical idea that it's like sin? Was there any
um,
other argument around it to kind of like scare you straight or whatever, get you
Oh,
to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I came from a church that had demonology,
Ooh.
right? So everything was a devil, including Facebook. Facebook was a devil. Like literally, there was a demon named Facebook. I mean, just crazy, fucked up shit, right? And they believed that, and well, they taught to a certain extent that sexual relationships outside of marriage was the biggest demonic portal you can open in your life for demonic possession.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to be fair, when I got out of the church and I'd recently gotten out of a relationship that I had with a woman in the church. I had a sexual relationship with a woman who was married, but not the marriage was falling apart and stuff like that. But I knew she was married, and we did have sex. The next morning, I woke up and I literally felt like I could hear the demons like coming in,
Oh Jesus.
and but it's all in my mind, right? It's all because of this bullshit that's been put in my head, and I thought I was gonna have a nervous breakdown, and then I was kind of like, no, no, this isn't real. And I think I quoted some scripture, I can't remember, like I'm the righteousness of God in Christ. So, one of those mantras, and boom, everything dried up. I was fine. And but yeah, it came from years of hearing this demon talk and all this other demon nonsense. But it's the mind creates the reality.
So every month at the church I used to go to a while ago, like this was we'll just say this is probably the largest church in Minnesota. So I went there, and they had, of course, multiple different, for every age group there was a ministry. And every month they had what was called Purity Month. It was a whole month, so 4 Sundays of messages that are basically meant to kind of teach you about purity and kind of, encourage the youth to be pure for God. They had like each year was a different theme. One year they they gave out like this. They had one year was like a Las Vegas theme kind of thing.
In the church.
In the church, yeah.
God damn.
You'll actually listen. This is another type of thing that Rolo and Conk talk about. They called it Christian kosher.
Right.
Basically, you take a theme, you take something, and you put a Christian spin on it, and it's like, ooh, it's all good now. Like Christian rock, Christian metal, Christian rap, Christian this, Christian that. Instead of being a counterculture, they're kind of just following
culture, yeah,
exactly.
They're not that creative.
Exactly. So anyway, so the early on they started getting into like, they did the whole, split up the men and the boys and the girls and talk to them separately. And they got into this whole discussion about like what is like, okay, so the problem they were noticing was, well, so kids understand, like, Christian kids are kind of like, yeah, don't have sexual intercourse before marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's do everything else.
Yeah, just don't stick your dick in her,
just do everything else, stick it everywhere else. So they get into this, and then the basically, I mean, fully just serious, having this discussion with like a youth leader who's like married, has a wife, and telling us about how like like dry humping is like could be like sinful. How like just what is too close, what is what is too far, what is close enough, what is too close, what is this? And I'm sitting here like, nowadays I look back and I'm like, who seriously sits there and like, how like paranoid must you be to sit there and wonder like if every little thing you're doing is sin or not, and like flirting with the line of where is sin and what isn't sin.
Yeah, I mean, it's complete bullshit, but that's how the church controls you when you're not there.
And they went even further. Some other people started talking about like relationships. They talked about like, I mean, the guys were of course giving all the blue pill answers, but talked about relationships and what is a relationship for? Should you date just to date? Should you date to actually marry? Things like that. And so this one guy actually comes up and says, every time you date, you understand, like, you can't, our culture today, we're not even talking about hookup culture or anything, or just sleeping around. They got into talking about like just dating people, having relationships. And they kept saying like, well, yeah, every time you're going to like date someone and have a relationship, like you need to understand like a part of you is sort of like devoted to them. Like, sure, they kind of said, piece of your heart. And they kind of were saying, how much of your heart is going to be left by the time you meet the right person. I'm like, oh, so kind of going back to the whole, like, it's better to even date less. And it's even, they're pretty much we're hinting at, it's better to just date the one and then get married. I'm like, holy shit, that's freaking scary.
And we would know this, our time traveling, ministering, and you hear the stories of men who get married. Even better, the stories of the Christian men that get divorced, but we'll get to that another time. They don't have that experience of just meeting the one, right? A couple of times that's been the case where, oh, the booming voice, oh, this God says this is your wife and it's all good and whatever. But generally speaking, that's not how it works. It requires dating. It requires meeting people, breaking up, meeting people, breaking up, and learning what you like, what you don't like, until you meet somebody whom you're compatible with. And that is discouraged in general, in Christianity generally.
Yeah, I mean, then they started getting into like, so a pastor's wife, a youth pastor's wife, who was talking about this, straight face, starts talking about how uh it's funny because it's just so ridiculous now that I look back on it. Was legitimately suggesting the idea, and this wasn't even like demons or anything. This was like, okay, so you have sex with someone. Well, like, sex is a very passionate, a very memorable, like intense thing. Like it makes like a psychological impression upon you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of think about sex for a while, who you've had sex with and such. So she suggested, like, every time you have sex, that's another like impression upon you. And over time, when so here you are just basically fucking up your biochemistry. Kind of what she was getting at was, and one day you do marry, and on your wedding night, you're going to have basically mentally, psychologically, you're going to have all these women in the room with you.
No.
Like it's going to like trigger these memories of every other woman you slept with. And I'm like, Jesus, like, I'm going to have like some psychological orgy or something, like, what are we getting at here? Like, and it's like, they just don't get it. Like, they don't understand. I mean, first off, the theology of just, premarital sex and all that is, it's already easy enough to question that, let alone to just talk about the fact that, like, theology that kind of just denies human nature, denies our biological drives. Like, me walking down the street, seeing a hot woman, it's not a demon.
No, it's not. And again, I mean, I don't know how we ended up on the church and dating as the topic,
So,
right?
I know. It's what happens.
It is what happens. It is what happens. Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, the churches, and I think we've discussed this before, they've failed to give a decent answer to the sexuality question and to the marriage question. And as I say, right, so you get all these scare tactics from these young people, telling kids, don't stick your dick in her vagina, vagina bad, dick in vagina bad, it's STDs. You're suddenly going to get like super gonorrhea. Your dick is going to fall off. I mean, just like every scare tactic in the book, right? Okay, fine.
Super gonorrhea. Oh boy.
Yes, right, and super syphilis, and whatever. Then you get fireballs coming out of your dick, and I don't think they're going to treat that with antibiotics. But anyway, the point is
exorcisms.
Yeah, you got to exercise the dick, man. But
oh, we there is that.
Oh yes, I know. Somebody grab the anointing oil. We're going to exercise this dick.
No, or pastors that use their dick to exercise.
Oh yeah, I've seen those as well. Anyway, the point I was making was, you tell these young people, right, 14 to let's say 18 or whatever the case is, you got to wait to get married to have sex, right? But the problem, of course, is that we are getting married later and later in life, right? I am 38. I'm almost 39, and I'm not married yet. I don't even have a girlfriend, right? If I were to stick to that hardcore rule, you're telling people potentially to stay celibate until they're 40 or beyond. Right?
Oh boy.
Now I'm just gonna be honest here, right? Especially now, with the advent of feminism and the amount of single women. Like, men, it's one thing, but the women that are entering their 40s unmarried is astronomical, right? And as we've said before, the fertility window on them is closing. You're gonna tell them, right, that they still have to wait?
No.
It's a losing message. It's a losing message. There's no way that message could actually stand up to the realities of life, right? Which is why we have an epidemic of single moms, right? They haven't been able to find someone So they just shack up, so at least they can get the biological imperative of breeding out of the way.
I just watched the 40-year-old virgin the other day.
Oh, the
You ever
comedy
watch?
with Carell? Was
Yeah, did
it?
you ever watch that?
I think I did. It was really stupid. I don't like that kind of American slapstick, to be honest.
Yeah, it was kind of a just a late night, just oh, this is interesting to watch, kind of um one of those because I mean, being American, that's kind of one of those American types of it was one of those genres that was really popular like late 90s, early 2000s. And I watched it and I was like, okay, that was all right, it wasn't anything. Um
Hey,
oh
Conk
hey,
is in the audience. Hey,
I was
Conk.
about to say Conk is in the chat. Um But, yeah, it's it was a funny way of looking at what happens if a man, like, never has sex till he's 40.
Yeah, I think, and this again, the flip side, which is also not beneficial, is young men, the first piece of pussy that they get, they marry it,
Ooh, that's really
right?
bad.
Which is also a problem, right? I know a couple people. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't work. There are a couple is apparently it's working out for them. I don't know the details, but because of that, okay, so they can't contain themselves. They bust a nut. They do the horizontal mambo, and then they feel, well, they've got to obey Paul's commandment. You can't contain yourself, so they get married. That also leads to a whole other host of problems. And then what ends up, you end up with a guy like I met yesterday who's divorced with a crazy wife that he never vetted or should have known better, religiously indoctrinated, saying that he'll take back his psychopath ex if, because it's biblical. I mean, no, that's not like the one of the biggest beefs that I have in my personal life with the churches that I was involved with. I was involved in the pickup artist community when I was a young man, a younger man. And I was learning game. I was there in the time of David D'Angelo and Mystery and Neil Strauss. And, I was picking up all those things. And I was even teaching it to a certain extent into my mid 20s. And then I got involved. Well, I was a Christian before. I was still learning all that stuff. Then I got involved in a church, and I remember the wife, well, the now wife of the pastor at the time, asked me about it because I was going on a TV show in Trinidad and Tobago called Mismatch, and it was a kind of dating relationship discussion and stuff like that. I'd called in on an interview before, and then they asked me to come in. And I told them, well, yeah, I'm going on TV, and it's about relationships and whatever. And I told them it's about game and understanding attraction is not a choice and all this other kind of stuff. And she's like, well, what is all that about? And I tried to explain it, the biology, the alpha triggers, the negs and whatever. And she's like, oh, that's demonic because you're manipulating women's minds. And me, with my naivete, wanting to be a good Christian and please the Lord, I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, that's demonic. Okay, I'm going to stop doing that. Right. Which I did for the better part of, I can't remember how long I stayed in that church. But the minute I got free of all of that, like the doctrine stuff, I realized that I actually had a pretty good skill for it. And I went right back into it. In fact, I was back on that road when I found Rollo Tomasi's book and Richard Cooper and all that other stuff, all of that self-improvement stuff that I'd let go of because of the church. I picked it back up. So I probably would have been a lot further along in my development if the fucking church didn't get in the way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's demonic. It's like, yeah, and what some pastors do with when they, word things and preach messages and convince people of all sorts of craziness. That's not manipulation at all. That's just doing the work of the Lord, brother.
Yeah. God, I hate it. I hate it so much. I mean, even my flatmate, he was with me. And I mean, he's not single. I'm not going to say his status because it's not public knowledge yet. But he just went because I was going, and we just gonna have some fun. We didn't really expect anything. But he says to me after we're leaving, he'd forgotten how bad Christianity was for relationships, right? And all the hoops that you have to jump through. So, when you meet someone for the first time, it's the usual plethora of questions, right? So what do you do? Where do you live? Where did you grow up? Are your parents psychopath killers? What do you think of a prenup? You got your checklist.
What?
Right? How
You're
many
talking like regular people or women?
Like regular people, well, men and women. But you have a checklist. You have a checklist of what you're supposed to be asking them, like what drugs are you on, right? How often do you see a therapist? How many voices do you hear? That kind of stuff. And then, from that point, those are the normal conversations, right? You're getting to know each other. But in Christianity, it doesn't start there. It starts with, so what church do you go to? What do you think about this? Do you believe this? And they put you through all the religious hoops.
Mm-hmm.
And that, as you and I both know, the religious hoops don't matter. Because you could be a sociopath and check all of the religious hoops off with Christian discipline and be in church every Sunday and lead worship, whatever. You can hide a plethora of mental disorders behind all of the Christian discipline. But you can't get to the real stuff until you go through that, that Christian checklist. It's just too much work, right? It's just, well, for me anyway, I'm tired of it. I'm like the one asked me, what church do I go to? I said, yeah, Brook Potter Ministries.
And then they kind of look at you like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have a pastor that you're accountable to? Yep, myself.
Yeah, pretty much. I use the bullshit excuse, like I just moved into the area, so I'm looking around, but it hasn't been a fruitful search kind of thing.
Now, I just thought of the story about this. So this friend, your flatmate, wasn't there something about when you guys went to? So this is like, this is like a little while ago, where you guys went somewhere and like he saw like some chicks that were like having fun, and he made a comment that basically like kind of made an impression on you. Do you want to mention that?
Yeah, we could discuss that briefly. I got free from the religious dogma a lot sooner than he did, and at first I didn't want to stay with him because he was really stuck in the religious stuff. Like he didn't want cursing, no drinking. You had to respect his house, no parties, no. It was just like a whole bunch of rules. And when I moved to the UK, I didn't want to stay with him at all because I knew it was just going to be, a stick up my ass, right? But something happened where a very personal, a family member of his passed away, which was very, very dear to him. And he did all of the good Christian stuff and whatever. And he was involved in a healing ministry that you were affiliated with. And they basically shit on him when this family member died, basically saying it was his fault because he didn't have enough faith or whatever. The litany of excuses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really helpful. That was not really helpful. So when I got there, he was broken. He was just tired of it all. He was frustrated. And he and I started going out, hanging out as friends, as mates. And I would just start to dissect all of the theology that has basically put him in bondage. Like when he told me about what happened with the church, blaming him for not having enough faith. And I basically said, what kind of message is that to a person? Basically, you killed her is what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, they're not saying literally he killed her, but because of her, she's dead. It's your fault. And I started to go through all of those points, and he started to kind of deprogram. He didn't have full understanding, but he definitely started to get some freedom. And one day I'm at work. Well, I was trading at home back then. So I was at home Friday evening. I think it was just before one of those school vacations. He calls me up and is like, let's go for a drive. Pack your shit. Let's go. I'm like, all right. And we went to Liverpool, which is about 5 hours away, right? It's not like around the corner.
Right.
And we went to Liverpool to party. We had no plan. We got there, we saw a hotel, booked a room, moved in, and then we went out on the strip and we ended up hitting a couple of the bars and the clubs and stuff like that. And it was in Pop World, one of the world famous Pop World. Great club. If ever you go out to Liverpool, I highly recommend it. Good music, beautiful people, reasonable price drinks. And my friend was in the club, and there was there's a lot of, young girls, pretty girls. And he just remembered looking at this bunch of girls, two of them, and they were just dancing with each other, listening to the music. I think they had on like reflected jackets. They were in some kind of thing. I don't remember why. And he just remembered thinking, they're so free and I'm not. And I'm supposed to be like the child of God and, Christian, whatever. And I'm supposed to be experience total freedom. And he says to God, I want what they have. And I mean, we don't know. I mean, we never saw them again, but that was the turning point in his life. And yeah, I mean, his life in the 1 year since then, his life is completely different, totally transformed. And he says now, he's, for the religious, they wouldn't understand his life. They're looking at him and they basically think he's a heathen. But he's so much more in tune with his spirituality and everything else that he wouldn't trade it for anything. He wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, that's been an experience for a lot of people who, I mean, the level of cognitive dissonance, like, we talk about all the time, and people kind of go down, they think it's just, people believe some contradictory ideas, and you kind of call them out, and they get upset. Excuse me. They haven't seen sort of the next level of what it is. So when you mentioned all this, it reminded me of an encounter with I met someone. We met someone who was looking for like ministry, we'll just say.
Yes.
So I was up there with our Brazilian and Californian friend when I first met them, up at the cabin.
Yes.
Way back, basically kind of where it all started with meeting people that you and I were connected with. And I had just I was basically at the very tail end of leaving that healing ministry I was with. And so I'm with them, and they are, we're all sharing, we're talking. And so there's these two ladies that came up from the cities, came up from Minneapolis, St. Paul area, wanted to meet us, and not without getting too much into like, theology and whatnot of like healing ministry and such. But there's the basic understanding that like it's, we use the term faith healing for a lot of people to kind of understand what it is. It's just understanding, you have faith in God's ability to heal someone, therefore they will experience that healing, that miracle, stuff like that. Faith is involved. So there was the ministries that I've been involved with over the years basically would state somewhere along the lines of either, the one who is sick has faith, or the person praying has faith. And I eventually, once I got kind of broke out of it, I basically said, it's like a Dr. Seuss story. My faith, your faith, his faith, the pastor's faith. It's just everyone's faith is somehow playing into this. So this lady comes up and she's talking to us, kind of explaining, so she wants us to pray for her, obviously. And she kind of goes on this whole, she is, it was looking like talking to someone who is experiencing trauma,
Right.
like mental, psychological trauma. Because she would look at us and she goes, well, but so I'm sick with this, but I'm supposed to have faith, but I'm not healed. But then I pray more, and then I'm supposed to have faith, but I'm still not healed. And then I pray even more, and people pray for me, and obviously my faith has some matter, but I'm still not healed. So then I do. So it's just this cycle of I pray to get more faith, to then see no result because, and the only reason is because I don't have faith.
Enough
So then I
faith,
go,
yeah.
so I go this cycle of just pray for more faith, don't have enough faith. Pray for more faith, don't have enough faith. Meet more people that supposedly have faith, that doesn't happen. So it must be something I'm doing wrong. Basically, this cycle of blame.
Yes.
Disguised as spiritual pursuit of something, spiritual exploration. It's like, but I'm not nowhere near like sounding like what she sounded like, but she was basically like, imagine a person kind of like in a psych ward, kind of rocking back and forth, saying the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. The mental aspects to those types of ministries and to Christianity in general, right? If you don't have a healthy understanding, and if you think, oh, I'm a sinner, I can't do anything right, and I need to flagell myself and stuff like that, that's grounds for mental disorder, straight up. So there's undoubtedly modern Christianity is driving people crazy, literally, right? With the deep, and if it's not you being bad, there's a demon that they never admit, but is more powerful than God in their understanding. All of that stuff is not good for mental health at all, and it's not good for relationships. It's not good for anything. And again, this is the second place where the Christianity has dropped the ball. So the first place is not having an answer to sexuality, like a good understanding and of like relationships and stuff. And the second aspect is they don't understand mental health. Now, both you and I, Amos, have prayed for things and believed, and nothing happened, right?
What?
Oh, blasphemy, stone the unbeliever.
I thought everyone I prayed for was supposed to like, whatever.
Exactly. Well, but I mean, everybody's experienced that. And the truth is, according to the theology, that shouldn't happen, which is why we put blame on, oh, you don't have enough faith, whatever. But we just don't know. And that was it for me. The reason I kind of walked away from a lot of that type of stuff was I can't bank on it. Right? That was just it for me. It's like, look, okay, I've seen some incredible things. I've seen amazing stuff, met some good people, some not so good people also. But I can't base my life on this something that's so, uncertain. And that's a large part of why I kind of walked away from that whole thing, especially when it came to relationships where, I mean, you don't even want to get started on Christian relationships and stuff like that, but relationships are difficult enough as it is. Living with somebody, spending time with somebody, and all these other things. And if you add on top of that a layer of religious psychosis, where they have to pray up enough for the day, or demons are going to get them, and you add all of this other nonsense, is it any wonder that 50% of the marriages in Christianity are falling apart? Like, seriously.
Some cases, isn't it higher in the church? Divorce?
So in some places, yeah. In some like in the Mormons and the Amish, I think have it kind of low. But I think the Mormons technically could marry more than one woman, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, they've kind of, regardless of how maybe messed up some of their theology and beliefs are, they at least have a little bit of a different understanding when it comes to, well, they might not outright say it, but I mean, Mormons believe in polygamy, and the Amish are just in the middle of nowhere. So they don't have a lot of the influence of technology and I guess the problems that can come from that, right? Wouldn't you agree?
I think to an extent. I mean, the Amish came up with a very interesting solution to I guess the pressures of living in the Amish community, where young teenagers at 18 are basically given the
2 years.
opportunity. Yeah, 2 years of debauchery. Right? You're allowed to drink, smoke, have sex, go out into the world, as they say it, and live it up. And then after that, you're given a choice. Do you want to return to the church and the community, or do you want to go out into the world and stuff like that? And they still do shunning, right? So if you choose to go back out into the world, you really can't contact your family again. But again, at least it's an honest attempt to deal with the human nature. It's an honest attempt to recognize that, look, the religion is not enough to supersede the nature of people. So we need to give an opportunity for an out, like a vent or something like that.
We actually knew someone who was Amish. We
Did
had a
you?
connection. We have a connection with someone who was part of a group from California.
Oh, really?
One of them was an Amish person. Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, you'll tell me about them later. But yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't return to the fold.
Yeah, he was basically, if you want to say, he quote unquote found God through his 2 years of debauchery.
As it does. Like, I sent a friend of mine to Thailand for therapy, and I basically said, go out there and fuck everything that moves.
Oh Jesus! I remember that actually. Yeah, you were telling me what he was like telling you about in pictures and such. Like he's just hanging out.
Yeah, and I told him, and this is a Christian guy, has like, you need to go to Thailand and you just fuck your brains out. And he said he found God after fucking like 60 women.
Oh Jesus.
Right? And that's not, to be honest, that's not the first time. There was another story about not I read this story. I don't know the person personally, but a guy in Texas basically wanted to commit suicide, sold his house, bought a truck, drove down to Mexico, and he moved into a brothel and just lived on cocaine and drugs and whores and stuff like that for 3 weeks. And then after 3 weeks, he's decided he really wanted to live. So the cocaine and the whores saved his life.
Could you imagine?
Like, I mean, how do you explain that to people?
How do you say that in I mean, not that we would really do this, but how would you explain it in a church?
I mean, I have a theology about that, but I mean, I can't share it because it would sound ridiculous. But the short answer is life. Like, the more you actually live your life, not just existing, not just breathing and stuff like that, but the more you actually live life, the more life you want to live. So if you're trapped in a day job or a career you hate or whatever, the divorce machine or whatever, and you're so fixated on that problem and you don't want to live anymore, a large part of why that is because you're not actually living, you're just surviving. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not diminishing real depression and yes, PTSD. I'm not talking about that. But for a lot of people, like the friend I sent to Thailand, this guy who went down to Mexico and stuff like that, I don't know his details. My friend, he was just existing. For a long time, he was just existing. I said, go to Thailand. It will change you. You will become a brand new man. You will become born again. And so said, so done.
So what you're saying is I need to go to Thailand.
I've been telling you need to go to Thailand for at least 3 years. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And the crazy thing is, like, my friend out there, he literally found God in like what is essentially a Buddhist country. Like, and again, a lot of people wouldn't understand that whole thing, but yeah, it totally transformed his life.
Yeah, that's got to be. I mean, that just breaks a whole bunch of barriers mentally and even religiously for some people to do that. I mean, Well, I think we should wrap up, not wrap up the show, but wrap up a little bit with bringing it back to our main topic. No, it's good. It's good we do. I mean, every time we do this, it's fine.
Yes.
So
there's another thing we can kind of touch on as it comes to women online, which is their propensity for controversy.
Yes. The where it comes into, I mean, when I guess my experience too is when talking to,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, my experience is always kind of like just looking at things what women do. There's a lot more. I mean, women have a lot more drama.
Sure.
just in general. I mean,
Especially on Twitter.
guys, yeah, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I've seen it pretty much in all of those places, and it gets really weird, especially like people will start blocking each other, and they'll still
Right.
do it. Um, the most I would ever engage it is just as a way of just having a little fun with trolling, but like women actually will get like venomous, and I mean they're literally just spewing. um, yeah, and I think it gives them, it's an extension of just men, like for example, I hear like comedians will talk about like let's say, so like there was one comedian I listened to, Brian Regan. He talked about how like he went golfing with a buddy of his, and they go out, and it's like, I mean, they're out there for a good few hours. Excuse me. And so they go golfing, and he comes home, and his wife's like, whatever his name is, the guy's Bob, so how's Bob doing? Well, he's doing all right. And come to realize, yeah, everyone knows this, but they just went golfing. Like, this guy just recently went through a divorce, like the friend Bob.
Yeah.
Well, how's he doing since the divorce? And he's just like, I think he's doing all right. Well, is he seeing anyone?
Right.
And he's like, the guy's like, I don't know. How did you go golfing with him? Yeah. You guys were in the golf cart golfing
And didn't
for
talk.
6 hours and didn't talk about this? He's got a new driver. Didn't come up at all. The wife's like, didn't come up? No. I mean, he kind of jokes like, what are you gonna do? He's gonna look. Well, that's a real nice shot. You seeing anyone? Like, and that's the thing, is just guys don't talk about certain things. Like, we're pretty. I mean, even the best of friends are probably very much. I mean, granted, I mean there's always exceptions, but for the most part, guys doing guy stuff, it keeps pretty much on the surface.
In some respects, yeah. Because you got a gang, right? You got like a group of good friends, guy friends, and they're gonna force you to kind of move on. They're gonna force you to kind of stiffen up. Like, oh, you little bitch, why are you crying over that woman? Fuck her. Get to the gym. Like,
or whatever. We're going out.
Yeah.
And so, and if Owen Benjamin talks about how like men are more capitalistic with their relationships. We always want to bring in a friend that has like cool toys. Yes. And if one of the friends is just being whatever because he broke up with a girlfriend or having a bad time with his wife, whatever, he's going through a rough time. It's like, hey, I called up Joe. Yeah, he's being a real dude, being a real asshole. He just keeps bitching about his ex-girlfriend. Yeah, fuck him. Let's just go out. It's just that, kind of just let him do his own thing. It's like they're not going to sit there and, ooh, what happened? What did she do? What did he do? All this. Whereas with women, it can become a lot more like that because it's, it's Owen Benjamin says more like a commune, more communistic. So it's like, no one can get too high up, but no one is allowed to drop too low. She's sad, she broke up with someone, and then they like kind of come together and get the ice cream, get the tissues, get the sappy movies. We're gonna help her. But then if like one of them gets too high and mighty, it's like, yeah, we're not gonna hang out with her anymore. She went in, found like a really good guy. Yeah, fuck her. We're not talking to her anymore. And think of it this way: in communism, you have no secrets.
Right.
In capitalism, you have some privacy. So,
actually, that's a game technique.
Okay.
Yeah, when talking to a woman, it's exactly what you said. You know, in communism, there's no secrets. If you want a woman to like fixate about you, tell her a secret, right? It actually doesn't have to be a real secret, but the minute you do that and then you ask her for a secret, and because she's entrusted you with it, she has to justify the fact that she's told you something as a secret. So she starts to justify you as somebody very close to her.
Hmm.
That's actually a bit of game. So if you're ever chatting with a woman, after you put them in the friend zone, always friend zone the girl first and ask them for a secret and say, I'll tell you a secret after nobody else knows. It doesn't have, like, honestly, it doesn't have to be a real thing, but yeah.
Or at least nothing too important, I guess, of a secret, right?
Yeah. And that's it, because women bond with secrets. They bond with, you know, the gossip and stuff like that. So all of them are holding information about what's going on behind the scenes. Whether it's accurate or not, of course, is another story. But they all feel special because they think they know something. So it's the same way men can actually kind of use that a little bit. They could use that female nature a little bit as part of game. Um, I did that with the Russian, and now we're going to Iceland. So yeah.
Wow.
No, I mean the Russian is cool and stuff, but like I said, she's one of the. I mean, she's a beautiful girl, but she's one of the most superficial women that I've ever been out with. Yeah, because it's all about looks, and she wants pictures of herself, and you know, but she's cheap to go out with because she doesn't want to actually go into anything. She just wants the picture of herself outside of it. So that's why I travel with her.
It's so bad.
Yeah, yeah, she wouldn't listen to this.
Well, yeah, that is true. Now, so yeah, the drama, yeah, drama between women definitely happens a lot more.
I mean, there is a sisterhood, right?
There definitely is. There definitely is.
Right? Even amongst women who've actually never met each other. Like we've seen this where women who don't even like each other would rally together on some common enemy. Right.
Yeah.
And that's very much like the SJW, the social justice warriors are like that. Yes, there's a lot of infighting on the extreme left, but the minute somebody from the right shows up, they're united against that particular person or that position or whatever. Even though there's internal fighting, which is why a lot of social justice is kind of led by women, you know, with the feminism and stuff like that. There are a lot of guys that jump onto it because they're hoping if they agree long enough, they might get laid. But it's not a predominantly male-driven ideology. It's a female-driven ideology.
I mean, I don't know if you've heard of the what happens with. They said it was very scary how people noticed this. The pattern they saw where when a group of, especially like Antifa, so Antifa, you know, get together and they go to some event to like obviously do their thing, and where videos or some sort of like front of this rally would take place where they're like, you know, sort of the stare down with whatever other group, a left, you know, right wing, whatever. There would always be like a bunch of guys kind of in a row, you know, kind of they're all yelling, doing their own thing. But one woman in the front of all of them.
Yeah.
Kind of with a megaphone, some sort of kind of dictating the chants, the whatever they're doing.
Right.
And they said that apparently was a thing, even like that's always been a tactic. That specific formation of a bunch of dudes and one chick in the very front.
Interesting. And I had not heard that, but I'm not surprised by it either.
Like it was used even, yeah.
Obvious enigma. One woman to rule them all. Yes, pretty much.
But yeah, they'd said that apparently has been a tactic for kind of leftists, Antifa types, even communists, like when they kind of had their revolutions, their stand downs kind of thing that happened just across the world. anywhere there's some sort of violent leftist sort of Joan of Arc phenomenon. Yes.
Exactly. I was actually, well, I wasn't going to use Joan of Arc, but I know for like even the Nazis, they would recruit these women and put them in like front and center in the advertisements, and there was there's a power of people understand that, yes, sex sells. So if you could get a woman to kind of be the face of the movement in some respect, men will follow suit, just because pussy, right? So
what you're saying is we need a female co-host.
maybe, and I mean, we've
Yeah.
seen that, right? I mean, just the biology of it. Our friend Steffi from last week, she's up to 8,000 Twitter followers. Oh, and congratulations to you on the 500.
Yeah, more than
but
you know.
Yeah, more than me. I humbly accept defeat. Like, I give a shit about Twitter. The fact is, I mean, Instagram is run by women. It's all booty pictures, and I mean, you just have to be a decent girl, and you got like 100,000 subscribers. I'm trying to barely crack 1,000. The women commentary on YouTube blowing up. All of them are like 500,000 subscribers. So they know anybody who has an ideology, you got to be smart, and you got to find a woman to speak in this respect, and that's what the left does.
Right.
Yeah.
The left does it, but it's not exclusive to the left.
Oh, no, because you have like what's her name, Candace Owens on the right, and you
have Lauren Southern, you had Faith Goldie, you have a lot of these figures on the right too, and then of course the big thing that was always, and it still is Fox News always had fairly attractive anchors.
Oh yeah. They're not stupid. They're not Mad Cow and these other types of announcers. The women on Fox News are pretty hot.
The whole Megyn Kelly thing.
Megyn Kelly is pretty hot. I can't remember the rest of them, but they've all been. Gretchen Carlson. I think she was like a Miss USA at one point. She's left now, but she was pretty nice. Yeah, we're not stupid.
And then what do you have on the left when it comes to media? Like mainstream media.
You got a gay black guy.
Gay black guy, gay white guy.
Gay white guy. And the two of them are buddies.
Oh, Jesus.
You got Rachel Mad Cow, who thinks, I think she's a mad. I'm not sure.
Or you just have guys. I mean, you don't have too many that like are very you don't have men on the left that are really give off that like strong masculine vibe. Not much, at least.
Yeah, it's a much softer men. Yeah, for the most part. Like I remember there was who was it? Somebody had found Goldman Unleashed from Twitter. So he's the photographer, game guy in New York. And he basically put up all the features that were attractive to, like, the traits of women that men find attractive. Long hair, feminine style, conservative. All these different types of things. And they put a list out, and it got on the news. Some local news station found it, and the whole show was two women and a man in the middle. And the guy reads, the woman reads out the list. And before she can even stop, he starts white knighting, like, this guy's an ass. This guy's a complete idiot. We don't even need to pay this guy any attention. And everybody kind of looked at that guy like, whose side are you on, motherfucker? Like, why are you betraying your brothers? Like,
right.
If you read the comments, even for me, like I said, I'm part of the London Psychedelic Society, and they have a men's meetup that's coming up. But if you read the description of the meetup, it's about traditional masculinity no longer works. And we're a bunch of guys that are trying to explore and expand the meaning and this, that, and the other, and all this fucking, gay shit. And I'm kind of like, I have no problem with traditional masculinity. Are you saying I'm not welcome to this thing? Like, what's wrong with, strength and courage and mastery and honor? Like, how does that not work? So they haven't responded to that, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, kind of being having the first person that I started dating, kind of since I've been experience gone through the red pill and such, that even a little bit of like manly, masculine, even a hint of masculine traits, the little bit that I have, sort of worked out for myself, somehow is huge.
Yeah.
Somehow is that much more than what is out there. Yeah, just talking to women and asking them, like, what, like, the men you come across in your day-to-day life, do you see anything that is remotely close to, like, even just a little bit of, like, how are you approached, when people talk to you and such?
Correct.
And a lot of it is very, like, they just don't get any hint of, like, oh, this is a man. It's oh, it's just a guy that you meet.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you remember, like, I was talking about my kidnapping a couple weeks ago to
Mhm.
Hastings. Um, and I mentioned one of the young ladies that we met there. So we just call her Green Eyes in that story. And I mean, Green Eyes has a lot of issues, so I'm probably not looking to really pursue anything. Although she is a very interesting woman. I managed to have a chat with the lady and her plants, which was our kidnapping mastermind, about Green Eyes, right? And she told me this. She doesn't know whether where she stands on everything. Um, but meeting me as a masculine man who actually has like balls attached and I'm not afraid to like wear them confused the shit out of her because most men out here are not that masculine and not that secure, right? I mean, they have them obviously, but so when Green Eyes met me, I threw her for a loop. And this is exactly what you're saying, that just to be able to stand up and enjoy being a man and that kind of thing, that is so rare. Your SMV kind of goes up the more masculine you kind of present yourself.
The What had happened with not a university student was, as we were texting leading up to meeting up, um, granted, I gotta close the gap between how I kind of approach things chatting in person, chatting on like through the internet or through a phone versus how I
In
present
person.
myself in person. Granted, I kind of worked through that a little bit, but um, she noticed, just the way, even just texting, messaging each other. Um, she said, basically, she kind of said, well, what I'm attracted to is the fact that you're very seated and confident in yourself. You're seated in who you are, and you don't care what people think. You're willing
Yes.
to share your ideas regardless of what you might think I think about it. She said, I like that. Even though we were politically, or are ideologically very different in some ways, I was still kind of just telling her, like, I told you we had one time over dinner, we had kind of the meta conversation about marriage, children, and stuff like that, and a family. And as much as maybe she didn't agree with everything I said, she liked the fact that I was just kind of like, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and this is why I believe it. And that's what she was drawn to. And then knowing her jobs, she was she provided childcare for like newborns, pretty much newborn, like 6 months to 18 months. So not quite newborns, but not quite even like really toddlers yet, kind of just right in there. And I asked her, like, do you not come across, like, have you not met people like men who just have any, like, seated and sort of sure of themselves attitude? Because I'm thinking, like, well, okay, typically, men who are having kids, they're probably around my age. If the kids are that old, so they haven't probably been even married that long.
Right.
So I'm thinking, oh yeah, so they probably haven't, one would hope they haven't thrown away too much of their manhood yet. Um,
No, not in this day and age. It's all fucking gone, man.
yeah, and by the time, yeah, and she was like, no, no, guys that come across, nope.
Yeah, there's definitely a lack of masculinity. I mean, as I say, even for my own life, I've only learned this and kind of really captured this within the last few years. Um, being raised by a single mom and all that kind of stuff. So I've always had the underlying traits, but church and everything else put the brakes on it, and I'm only now kind of really stepping into it, where I feel good about stepping into it, and I notice the difference, and people notice it as well. When I go out here, you know, I people say it, they can literally feel the energy change when I'm kind of in the room and I'm controlling the frame and these other things. It's pretty wild, and not everybody else is in tune with that to really pull that off. I'm not saying I'm the best, the greatest, or anything.
When you showed up to the family gathering, my
Yeah.
family gathering, and everyone's like, and my sister kind of looks at me, "You're friends with him?
Yeah.
That's your friend? Yeah. Huh."
It was good. It was meeting your family was pretty good, and I definitely controlled a little portion of that entire thing. It's pretty good.
Dominated the room.
Awesome, man. Awesome. How we doing on
But
time?
we're just about there. So, anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No, definitely. It was a good week. I enjoyed the show. I think we have a guest coming up next week.
Oh, yes. So, and I'm like 99% sure on this. The 1%. Yeah. Anyways, we're going to have Vinny Marshall on next week. So, Vinny is pretty much the CEO head dude of Think Liberty, who I write for. And then for that short time, of course, we were part of the Think Liberty Network for podcasting and such. But, yeah, we're going to have Vinny on next week. He's going to kind of talk about kind of along the lines of like libertarianism and such, but he's going to kind of comment on sort of this disconnect that libertarians have with just the general public. Like most people agree with libertarian ideas for the most part. Like they can, once you kind of walk them through a lot of things.
Yes.
But when it comes to like effectively communicating the message in order to like enact change, just changing public opinion,
yeah,
libertarians suck. tend to be lacking in the empathy department.
Sure.
We're kind of all facts and no feelings.
Yes. Yeah. I know exactly.
So, and then of course, I think he'll probably touch on a little bit of just how the LP itself is just failing, but plenty of people know that. So we'll get into that next week, but excuse me. And of course, as usual, what is interesting too is he doesn't show his face too often. So, not that no one knows what he looks like, but since we'll have him on this, I'm pretty sure we're going to get him on the webcam. But
cool.
Because usually everyone hears him on podcast form, some sort of audio form. No one really sees him. But we'll have him on next week, same time, same place. Yeah, this is our 57th episode. Probably have to change the title a little bit. Probably like women, the internet, and the church.
And church, yes.
Yeah, we kind of slipped that in there. But thanks everyone for watching. Of course, this is our 57th episode. Check us out on Google Play, iTunes, Podbean for the podcast form of this show. This comes out usually by early Tuesday morning. And then, of course, check out our Facebook page, our Patreon, our Subscribe Star. Pretty much all the links below. So anything you want to quickly add, Brook?
No, I think it was a great show. Thanks everyone for watching. I look forward to next week's show.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.